Hi, everyone. This is Jillian with Court Junkie. Court Junkie is a true crime podcast that covers court cases and criminal trials using audio clips and interviews with people close to the cases. Court Junkie is available on Apple Podcasts and podcastone.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 282 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you? It's so great to have you back in the studio.
Hey, man, it's nice to be back in the studio.
Yeah, you and I talked on our Patreon. We also talked on TCAT. Obviously, last week was very rough for you with your mother passing away, and condolences from so many people.
Yeah, everybody's been great about it.
Yeah, the TCAT family really came out in support, and it was massive. But, you know, getting back into the studio, getting back into a routine, it's good for you.
It is.
You said that. You told me that.
I did.
So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad to be in the studio. I'm glad to get my mind off of certain things and on to other things.
Yeah, because this is something that you and I have done for 6 years.
Right. We
know how it goes. And, you know, when you're recording the podcast, you don't really have time to think about anything else because your focus has to be on what you're talking about, what you're going to say, coming up with the Gibbyisms. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Stacy Jack.
Hey, Stacy.
Stephanie.
Well, thank you, Stephanie.
Lisa Fitzsimmons.
Hey, Lisa.
Melanie Plotz.
What's going on, Melanie?
Linda Connor.
Hey, Linda.
Angel Gonzalez.
I appreciate that, Angel.
Elizabeth Stubbs jumped out at our highest level.
You're awesome, Elizabeth.
Susan Davis.
Hey, Susan.
Carly Saul.
There's Carly.
Brittany Kemp.
What's up, Brittany?
Melody Kennedy.
Hey, Melody.
Mai Fukushima.
Oh, hi, Maya.
Louise Richard.
What's going on, Louise?
Amy Ottmers.
Hey, Amy.
Josh Dreves.
What's up, Josh?
Alicia Ramirez.
Hey, Alicia.
Sienna.
I like that name, Sienna.
I do too. Liz Savaskin.
Hey, Savascon.
Nicole Littlebrandt.
What's up, Little Brant?
Amelia Poole.
Hey, Amelia.
Sir Round Sound.
What's up, DJ Sir?
Brent Johnson.
Hey, Brent.
Preston Meeker.
What's up, Preston?
And last but not least, Joey.
Hey, thank you, Joey.
Then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Danielle Winslow.
Hey, thank you, Danielle. I wonder if she's from Arizona. Winslow,
Arizona.
See how I did that? Worked that in there?
It's Eagles reference.
Exactly.
I like it. We had some PayPal donations. We had a birthday shout out to Lindsay Davis from Darlene.
Hey, happy birthday, Lindsay.
Robert Snyder gave a sizable donation.
Man, look at you, Robert. Thank you.
We also had donations from Gregorio Alfonso.
I appreciate that, Alfonso.
And Paul Worley.
Hey, how's it going, Paul?
So thanks to everyone who chooses to help support the show. Gibbs, right now on True Crime All the Time, we have out part 2 and the final part on Samuel Little. And obviously we had to take a different tact last week and put out something else. But we're finishing up Samuel Little, and we're really diving into, you know, his later confessions and just how prolific of a serial killer was this guy.
Well, he really was. He definitely was a monster, and I really enjoy some of the, I hate to use the word enjoy, but I really liked hearing some of the audio that was added to that.
I think enjoy is fine because it is interesting. It is fascinating to hear the killer speak. Now, still a monster, still a piece of you-know-what,
right.
But the fascination is there. You want to hear what they have to say, and especially this guy, because it's not always what he says, it's the way he says it. Mm-hmm. And that's true for a lot of killers. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We're talking about the Blue Ridge Savings murders. On May 16, 2003, someone activated the alarm inside the Blue Ridge Savings Bank in Greer, South Carolina. The police arrived minutes later to an eerie scene. Nothing outside the bank looked unusual, and there were no signs of a disturbance inside the lobby. But in a back utility room, they found 3 people dead from gunshot wounds. 19 years later, the Blue Ridge Savings murders remain unsolved. It was around 1:30 p.m. on May 16, 2003, that one or more unknown individuals robbed the Blue Ridge Savings Bank in Greer, South Carolina. Blue Ridge Savings sat at the end of a frontage road next to Interstate 85. So this bank was kind of in a perfect location. It was in a fast-growing community, and it was next to a very busy interstate.
Yeah, it sounds like it's in a good location for a bank that wants some good business, but it's also in a good location if you want to rob it, being right off the interstate. Talking about ease of access.
Well, and let's face it, when it comes to robberies, that plays a factor. How quickly can you get back on the interstate and gun it?
Yeah.
Now, the bank was also near the Greensville-Spartanburg Airport, Highway 14, and a BMW plant. And Blue Ridge Savings didn't look like a traditional bank building. It was actually like a small green trailer. And it was a new addition to Greer. It had been open less than a year. Blue Ridge Savings was based in North Carolina, but the bank was expanding into upstate South Carolina.
I think it'd be weird to roll into a bank that's or inside a trailer. Strange. But, if it's a temporary location, or maybe it was just the way they did business, I don't know.
I'm assuming it was temporary, but still, if I've got my hard-earned savings and I'm looking at where to put it, trailer's probably not going to be my first option.
Yeah, I'd probably think I'll get a safety deposit box down the road in that concrete building.
The one that looks real safe and secure. So there's trailer, and then below that would be like a functioning RV that actually you can drive. Not going to put my money there either.
No.
The teller on duty during the robbery was 56-year-old Sylvia Holtzclaw. Employee Tom Begley was not inside the bank during the robbery. He actually returned after the alarm was set off. And Sylvia wasn't even supposed to work that day. Before lunch, she received a call from a coworker asking her to cover her shift. And this is something, Gibbs, that you hear from time to time.
We do.
In cases. Whether it's somebody working at a convenience store, a bank, whatever it is, not supposed to be there that day.
Right.
But somebody, let's say, gets sick, can't come into work, or has to leave early. So this person gets a call. Can you cover my shift? And of course, they're a good person. They're a good employee. And they say, yeah, I'll help you out.
Right.
And the next thing you know, they become the victim of a homicide.
And whoever called off, they'll have to live with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming in most of these cases, the person called off is not in on it. So it's not their fault. But to your point, they're going to have to live with that. Is it going to be tough on them? I'm sure it is.
Right.
Even though it wasn't their fault. We say that all the time. People experience sadness and regret and emotions like that, even when, what they didn't directly cause the situation. According to Greer Police Captain Matt Hamby, there was a magnetic lock on the bank door that had been having some trouble. It had been fixed a few times since the bank opened. According to Captain Hamby, Sylvia called to request a repair on the day of the robbery. I think it's pretty common and has been for some time that, a lot of banks lock their door and they either want to see you before they'll let you in. Now, obviously, back in the day, it was never like that. You just walked into the bank.
Right.
But security and in a lot of facets of our lives have changed dramatically over the years.
It was like being buzzed in.
You're good with that.
Yeah.
Like at a jewelry store, I know the jewelry store that I go to, that my wife likes to buy stuff at too much, if you ask me, they have to buzz you in.
Yeah, like that. Buzz me in.
Does it make you feel important?
Kind of it. Yes.
Well, I'm assuming there has to be a reason that you like it.
But they do it at my grocery store. They buzz me in there. I don't know why they have to do it there. It's weird.
An elderly married couple, Ebb and Maggie Barnes, went to the bank that afternoon to move some money to their IRA account. And it was after Sylvia made this repair request that Ebb and Maggie drove to the bank. At 1:36 p.m., someone inside the bank activated the silent alarm, which alerted the police that the bank was being robbed. The Greenville News has posted articles with some conflicting times. A 2003 article says the alarm was activated at 1:36 p.m. A 2015 article says the alarm was activated at 1:28 p.m. True Crime Daily has reported that the alarm company contacted the police at 1:30 p.m. and an officer was dispatched at 1:31. So we see this all the time. You know, when you're reading as many newspaper articles as we do, as we're researching cases, a lot of times you see it with ages.
Right.
Victims' ages, perpetrators' ages.
Sure do.
They're all over the map. And I'm not just saying like a year off. They can be way off. Now, obviously, these times are not that far off. 5 minutes either way. But could it make a big difference?
Could have an impact.
It could. Lieutenant Eric Presley told True Crime Daily, many of the alarms that we get, period, are false alarms or accidental activation of the alarm. So we had no idea exactly what we were looking at when we were responding to that alarm. Now, I get that, but I'm assuming that police are always going in with the thought that this alarm is real.
Right.
Just because a high number of alarms are false, I wouldn't think you'd want to go in with that type of thinking.
Yeah, I don't think you want to do the cry wolf thing with an alarm system.
No. This. Greer police officers responded to the alarm call. The first officer arrived at the bank 13 minutes after the alarm went off. Officers at the bank didn't see anything unusual from the outside. Once they entered the bank, it was like a ghost town. They didn't see any employees or customers in the lobby. But as they moved through the bank, they found 3 bodies down the hallway in a utility room. The victims were Sylvia Holtzclaw, the bank teller, and customers Ebb and Maggie Barnes. All 3 had died from gunshot wounds, and all 3 were shot by what was determined to be a .40 caliber Glock pistol.
It seems like 13 minutes is a long time to respond.
I thought that as well. I mean, I know Greer is not a huge city.
Yeah.
I'm not that familiar with it. I am familiar with some big cities in South Carolina, but I also don't think it's a really, really small town either. But I have no idea what was going on that day. How many officers did they have working?
Yeah.
Was everyone busy at the time that, the call went out? And is the 13 minutes absolutely correct? Because we just talked about the differences in the reporting of when the alarm actually went off.
Right.
So we don't know. The police secured the crime scene and called in forensics and other law enforcement agencies. Further investigation revealed that money was missing from the cash drawer, but it wasn't that much. The Greer police have not confirmed that the VHS tape with security footage of the robbery was missing, but they have said they have little evidence besides shell casings found at the crime scene. Looking for fingerprints wouldn't have been helpful because of all the customers and employees coming in and out of the bank throughout the day.
I kind of wonder if maybe the tape is missing since they haven't said by this time.
Well, and also, wouldn't you think that if they had the tape, they would have the killers on tape, even if they were wearing masks? A lot of times they'll release that footage because they want people to try to identify.
Yeah.
So I think I'm leaning with you in the tape being missing, even though they probably don't want to come out and say it. A few hours later, the police obtained security footage from a gas station down the street. It showed that at 1:24 p.m., a red car was seen driving towards the bank. One gas station camera showed a red car leaving the interstate and turning left. The second camera showed the car turning left onto the frontage road, and then the Barnes truck was seen following the red car down the frontage road just a few minutes later. The same red vehicle was seen driving away from the bank after the murders. So I don't think you have to be Sherlock Holmes to put it together that this red vehicle is somehow involved. And based on the security footage, the police believe that the driver of the red vehicle entered the bank to rob whoever was working that day, and then Ebb and Maggie Barnes walked in during the middle of the robbery. Captain Hamby told True Crime Daily, "We think the motive was robbery, and we think the perpetrator lost control of the incident in the bank and panicked, most likely, and determined that he was going to shoot and kill 3 victims." And to me, Gibbs, this is a big part of this case. Banks get robbed all the time.
They do.
My understanding is that bank tellers are instructed to give up the money, don't fight. Yeah, maybe hit the button, I guess, if you can or whatever.
Right.
So I think in this scenario, there is one big question you have to ask. And it's why these 3 people were killed. Because if you got what you wanted, why was there the need to shoot these 3 individuals?
Right. Unless somebody knew who you were.
Yes.
Or you panicked, or I guess another scenario would be that somebody decided to try to be a hero at that moment.
Or you thought they were going to try to put up a struggle. Yeah, I get you. But it's a good question to ask, right? You got to try to answer that question. I mean, maybe this person didn't have a mask and they went in knowing that I got to get the security tape and I got to kill everyone inside.
Yeah.
Because I'm not hiding my face.
And this couple that just walked in, they happened to know me.
The police were initially searching for 2 people, possibly a man and a woman in a red car. Construction workers in the area saw the car leaving the crime scene before the police arrived. And really, these construction workers were the only witnesses. One unknown man was allegedly at the bank before the robbery and shooting. He was described as a white male, 5'6" to 5'8", and about 230 pounds. He appeared to be somewhere between 50 and 53 at the time of the murders. He had short blonde hair that was slightly graying and looked clean cut. Okay, that's a pretty good description.
It is. Short, stocky guy, blonde hair.
50 plus. A lot of times when people give descriptions, it's 5'2" to 7'9".
Yeah.
120 to 280. I'm exaggerating,
right.
But
yeah.
A lot of time, and with ages as well, a lot of times they're not this close. 5'6" to 5'8". Okay, that's a small range. 50 to 53. That's a pretty small range. The police spent the entire night investigating the crime scene. Officers parked every few miles along the interstate looking for this red car. But these murders absolutely devastated the close-knit Greer community.
How couldn't it? It's not something you expect to see happen in a small community.
No, anytime people are murdered in a smaller city, a smaller town, obviously it draws much more attention. I mean, how many people get murdered every day in New York City or Chicago,
right,
or LA? I'm not saying that those murders are any less tragic.
Right.
I'm just saying those towns are so big that the chances of you knowing that person versus when you live in a small town like where I live, chances are if somebody gets murdered, I might know them.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, you don't expect those types of, a triple homicide. If that happens around here, it would be
big news.
Big news. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies all lined up and ready to compare. So it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates. Quote at Progressive.com to join the over 27 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. You know, Gibbs, when we went to Vegas for CrimeCon, I took my Away carry-on bag. It is by far the best one I've ever had. Away makes suitcases, bags, and other travel accessories. No matter where you're going, you can rely on Away's range of travel products to solve real travel problems and get you out there. My carry-on suitcase is so durable. The wheels are amazing. There's even a built-in charger. All of Away suitcases are built to last. They use durable, lightweight materials that can withstand even the roughest of baggage handlers. Away offers free shipping and returns on any non-personalized order within the contiguous US, Canada, and the UK. Plus, there's a 100-day free trial on everything Away makes. Take the product out on the road, use it, live with it, travel with it for 100 days. If you decide it's not for you, you can return any non-personalized item for a full refund. During that period, no ifs, ands, or asterisks. Start your 100-day trial and shop the entire Away lineup of travel essentials, including their best-selling suitcases and bags at awaytravel.com/TCAT. That's awaytravel.com/TCATT. Sylvia Holtzclaw was born and raised in Greer, South Carolina. Her oldest son, Kevin, worked as a firefighter in Greer, and David did sports marketing for Florida State University. Sylvia was the only person working that afternoon. And we already mentioned it, but she agreed to help a coworker and take over her shift. She was supposed to go with her sons that day. They were going to take her to tour the BMW plant, which is something that she had been wanting to do for some time. Kevin Holtzclaw called David and asked him to bring Sylvia some lunch. David stopped by the bank at lunchtime to drop off the food, and then he went to the mall. About an hour later, a friend called him and said he was going to pick him up. But this friend was reluctant to tell him why, but eventually said, "I don't know how to tell you this. There's been a robbery and your mother is dead."
Rough news to hear.
Yeah, extremely rough. And, I kind of understand why this friend went about it the way they did. Hey, let me come get you, because I'm sure in this person's mind, they were thinking, the last thing I want after I tell David this news is for him to jump into his car, because he's going to be distraught. So let me come get you. I'll explain everything. But I would be the same way. If you called and said, "Hey, let me come get you."
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah.
You tell me why, or we're not doing it.
Right. Because you'd be off.
It would. It'd be strange. Sylvia was very involved in her community. She volunteered with the Greer Fire Department and helped organize events for her church. David Holtzclaw told True Crime Daily, "She was the most kind-hearted, givingest person I've ever known. Loved her community, loved kids, loved what she does. Her friends would tell you she would talk for hours. She just enjoyed being around people. I don't know of a better person than her." Everyone at the Greer Fire Department knew Sylvia. She often stopped by. She would just drop off food for them. On the day of the murder, the Greer police chief called Fire Chief Chris Harvey and told him not to let Kevin come to the bank. But Kevin had already left when he couldn't get in touch with Sylvia. Chris Harvey told the Greenville News Sylvia would have given the robbers the money, hugged them, and then opened the door for them on the way out. So I think, people are painting a real picture
Right.
of Sylvia Holtzclaw. And the picture is this woman was beloved.
Yeah.
She was a great person, and she would pretty much do anything for anyone. That's just the way she was.
She was no threat to anyone.
No, and I think that's important. She would have given the money, given them a hug, and opened the door for them. She was not going to put up a fight over money that wasn't even hers. And why would you? Most banks have policies. People have gotten fired.
Yeah.
For not giving up the money.
Right.
Because they directly violated a bank policy.
Yeah. Just do what they want. Things should be okay.
Banks get robbed.
All the time.
When you're a bank, you know that. Money you can replace.
Well, most banks are insured anyway.
What you can't replace is a good employee.
Right.
A person's life. And so that's why they have the policies they do. The other two victims, as we mentioned, were a married couple who walked in, it's thought, as the robbery was occurring. Dr. James Barnes was a 62-year-old retired physics professor at the University of South Carolina at Spartanburg. EB, as he was known, was very respected and admired by his colleagues and students. 58-year-old Margaret Barnes enjoyed weaving tapestries. And I guess she was pretty good at it. Some of her tapestries were hung at the University of South Carolina at Spartanburg.
You seen my tapestries?
I have not seen your tapestries.
I think you'd be impressed.
I don't think they would be hung up anywhere. Margaret also worked as a receptionist and coordinator for the National Beta Club. James and Margaret often went by the nicknames EB and Maggie. They met at King College in Bristol, Tennessee. They got married in 1965. EB and Maggie had a son and 2 daughters. They were beloved members of the university community. The Barnes family has chosen really not to speak with the media much about their family members. And I don't really make anything of that. I think that's a personal choice in a tragic situation like this. I understand how a family member would want to, heap praise on a loved one who's lost their lives. But I also understand how, some people are just very private.
Yeah.
They don't really want to answer questions. Let's not forget they're grieving. And so they're private. They don't like to answer questions. They don't want their name in the paper. Just leave me alone and let me grieve this loss.
Let me do what I got to do. I'll move on and don't keep asking me questions.
Special Agent Joe Paris of the Atlanta FBI office told the Greenville News that the bank's location may have been a factor in why it was targeted. I think this goes back to what you were saying. Gives easy access, ingress, egress. He said, we noticed that banks that have ready access to major thoroughfares do seem to get hit more often. And the reason is twofold. They're more visible because they're on a thoroughfare, and the thoroughfare provides a ready escape route. All of that makes perfect sense.
That's why I always that's why I might choose them if I wanted to rob a bank.
If you were a bank robber.
Exactly.
And or if you were DB Cooper, which is still a working theory.
It was really cold that night when I jumped out of the plane.
It was. By May 18th, the police were said to have been investigating about 75 leads. The video footage of the red car was sent to the FBI for enhancement to identify the make and model. Now remember, this is early 2000s. Okay, we had security surveillance. It wasn't 4K. It wasn't as good as what we have today.
Probably a little grainy.
Yeah, I remember in the late 90s working at places that had security footage. And every time I checked it, I was like, why do we even have this? I can't even see what's going on. It was believed that the car was either a Chevy Impala or an Oldsmobile Alero. There were about 100 people in the area who owned an Oldsmobile Alero, but none of them had any connection to the murders. One bank customer told the police about a man who was said to have been acting shady earlier that day. This man was in his early 50s, white, blonde, short, and described as portly.
I haven't heard that in a while. Portly.
No, but I like that description. Don't call me heavy. Don't call me overweight. Just call me portly.
Yeah,
sounds better.
It does sound better.
It's a little euphemism. Now, this man turned out to be the bank's janitor. So once you find that out, okay, does it make sense that this man was seen around the bank? Maybe. But what about this acting shady part?
I'm thinking as a janitor, I'm thinking, well, what's up with that? What do you think I was doing that was so shady?
The murders caused banks across the country to take a look at their security policies and review robbery procedures with their employees. And you see this anytime something like this happens. It causes the rest of the players in an industry to say, okay, what if this happened to us?
Right.
And we better take a look at what we have in place and all that.
What can we be doing differently to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
To make sure either it doesn't happen, or if it does happen, we've got the right policies that say, like what we were talking about before, don't put up a fight, give them the money. Bank officials spoke with the Greenville News and said it was unusual to have just one individual working the bank, but that having 2 or more employees probably would not have stopped the robbery. And it did seem strange to me because, to be honest with you, I can't remember the last time I went into a bank and there was only one employee working.
Right.
Now, this is outside of like those little bank branches that you find in a Kroger.
Yeah, but there's other people around, right?
Yeah. It's inside of a busy place. But we said that, it being right off the highway could be an incentive to rob this bank. You know what could be another incentive? Is if you knew that only one person was working versus 2 or 3.
Yeah, would be helpful.
Be easier to corral one person, obviously, right?
Yeah.
On May 21st, local news outlets spoke with the FBI and learned that they had made progress in their investigation, but they declined to comment further. Always the problem in unsolved cases.
Right.
Yeah, we've got some leads. We've got this. We've got that. We just can't tell you what it is.
Sometimes they keep that information close to them, but sometimes I think it might be better off if they didn't.
I think in a lot of cases, it's a calculation. What can we disseminate? What do we need to hold back to ensure that if we do get a suspect, we have something that only that person would know, right? If we tell everything, then somebody walks in and confesses. How do we know if it's really them or not?
Right.
The other thing I think about sometimes is maybe the police don't want to give out information because that would lead the suspect to do something, get rid of a car, scrap a car, maybe move away if they thought they were too close to figuring out who the person actually was. Yeah. I don't know. But I see your side of it as well. Obviously the more information you disseminate, the more potential you have for people coming forward with viable tips and leads.
That's
so
true.
It's kind of a tough balancing act.
Yeah.
In late May, the papers announced that the police were seeking 2 truck drivers that left I-85 at the same time as the red car. Cameras from a Spink station near the bank showed a white Dodge truck come to a stop at the intersection of State 14 and I-85 at 1:25 p.m. A red car followed the Dodge truck. This car is believed to be the same car seen by the construction workers. A white gravel truck followed behind the red car and stopped. And then the car and trucks traveled southbound on I-85. Cameras from a Texaco station on the other side of the State 14 bridge showed the white Dodge drive by and the red car heading down the frontage road to the bank. But none of the cameras were able to pick up a license plate. So police were seeking these drivers to ask them if they noticed any details about, who was in this red car. 400 people were interviewed over a 12-day period following the murders. 2 inmates arrested on unrelated charges were also interviewed, but they were not considered official suspects. One convicted robber in the nearby city of Spartanburg was a person of interest, but he had a strong alibi because his time card showed he was at work and his supervisor confirmed he was at work.
So, two sources.
Yeah, we've talked about time cards before. I'm leery about time cards. Now, could you get a supervisor to cover for you as well? Sure.
Yeah.
But you got two things that are pointing to the fact that this person was at work. You and I spent a lot of our Patreon episode this week talking about the updates on the Adnan Syed case.
Right.
Big news in the world of true crime. If you remember, there was a lot made about Don's time card.
Yeah.
And his alibi, which was supported by that time card. Man, I want that case to be solved so bad.
I know.
I do. I really do. On July 16th, 2003, the police officially identified the red car as an Oldsmobile Alero. Okay, so it could have been an Impala, could have been an Alero. Now they know. It was definitely an Alero. Captain Hamby told the Greenville News that it was possible that the killer drove off to another state using the highways. He believes that it's possible the robber had a plan. And we kind of mentioned this before, right? Had a plan, but panicked when the robbery didn't go quite exactly according to plan. By August 2003, law enforcement agencies had to pull resources from the case. Initially they had a 40-member task force set up to answer phones and follow up on tips. I guess they worked 20-hour days for several weeks after the murders. The police received a lot of tips at first, but none of them led anywhere. And then by 2004, the case had gone cold. Although the police had identified the vehicle as a red Oldsmobile Alero, they still had no idea who the driver was. Then on the morning of April 15th, 2004, a gunman attempted to rob the Blue Ridge Savings Bank. At 8:30 a.m., an employee was walking to the front door. A green Chevy Suburban pulled up behind him. A man got out of the passenger side, pulled a mask over his face, and pointed a gun at the employee. The man ordered the employee to stop at the door, but this employee took off. So the suspect got back in the truck and the driver headed towards State 14. The employee called the police. No money was stolen. The vehicle was identified as a 1996 to 2000 Suburban with tinted windows and a luggage rack. But people who were working in the area didn't report seeing the Suburban. So it's pretty gutsy.
Really gutsy.
What this employee did, it worked out. But man, things like that could go terribly wrong.
Yeah.
But when you're frightened, you make split-second decisions. And this one happened to work out okay. Investigators then learned that a red Oldsmobile Alero was stolen from a rental car lot near the Columbia Metropolitan Airport before the murders. On May 1st, 2003, someone drove a car through a fence to get into the lot and steal the car.
That's really a good potential lead, if that's the car used for the robbery murders.
Well, it's a potential lead, but how are you going to figure out where to start? You're not going to have a rental slip. Nobody rented the car. It's actually pretty smart if you think about it on the part of the robbers. Use a rental car that you didn't rent, because how in the world is it going to be traced back to you?
Right. And it's going to have a lot of different users' DNA in it.
And 8,000 fingerprints and DNA and sure, hairs, fibers, all of that. I know they clean those out, but how good? I've had some really clean ones. I've had some not so clean ones.
Yeah, I worked for National Car Rental back in the day.
We'll pick you up.
Yeah. I'm just saying, depending on the what was going on at the time, some of those cars, like you said, got really clean. And some of them, you were lucky that we even touched it before we put it back on the line for pickup.
Also, depending on how much you had to drink the night before.
Maybe.
Maybe that played a factor.
Maybe.
In August 2004, the Barnes family reached an undisclosed settlement with the Blue Ridge Savings Bank. Elizabeth Davis, Ebb and Maggie's daughter, filed the lawsuit alleging that the bank failed to meet federal security requirements and failed to warn customers about security risks. Because of workers' compensation laws, the Holtz Clause were forbidden from suing the bank. The Georgia State Police found the red Alero in October 2004 at a checkpoint near Eastman, Georgia, and they chased the driver, a man eventually identified as Emerson Wright. Wright pulled over, ran away, and was not caught. Investigators in Georgia who knew about the Blue Ridge Savings murders contacted Greer police. Man, this guy must have been pretty fast to pull over and run away from the cops. I mean, Can we get a helicopter out there or
something to apprehend him a little quicker?
A pit maneuver, run him off the road? The police checked Emerson Wright's background and found that he had been charged with armed robbery in the past and that he had used a .40 caliber Glock to commit the crimes.
Well, we got some similarities here, don't we?
Yeah. This guy's looking like a pretty good suspect, right? Now, Glock is the most common handgun. I think more Glocks are sold than anything, I'm pretty sure. Now, .40 caliber is not the most common caliber by any means.
But the fact that he has the Glock, has the car, and has been known to rob things before.
Yeah. He doesn't look good. And he ran away from the police.
Right.
Driving a red Alero. So obviously Emerson Wright became the main person of interest in the case. The problem was police couldn't locate him. He'd already run away from him once, and now they couldn't find him. Emerson was also wanted for arson and robbery by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. And this was a guy who had been in and out of prison. He was convicted of burglary and aggravated assault on police in Georgia in 1985. In 1987, he was convicted of eluding an officer. So apparently he was pretty good at that, although he got caught that time. But I do want to go back, right? Burglary and aggravated assault on police in 85. Obviously, he did less than 2 years because in 87, he was convicted again. Then in 1994, he was convicted of receiving stolen property. In 2002, he was convicted of burglary. In South Carolina in 1987, he was convicted of driving with a suspended license. Okay, in the grand scheme of things, that's not the worst thing in the world. It's not good, but it doesn't rise to the level of some of this other stuff. In 1990, he was charged but not prosecuted for unlawfully carrying a firearm. Emerson Wright went by the aliases Emerson Wright. I know that sounds strange, but you got to see it on paper for it to make sense.
Right, yeah.
His name was spelled with 2 M's, but apparently sometimes he went by Emerson with only 1 M. He also went by Ernest Wright and Acom Johnson.
You know, when you have a few aliases, it also makes you look guilty.
Oh, yeah, it does. Because you have to ask the question, why do you need an alias in the first place? You know, why do you need Jason Bourne level aliases and passports and currencies unless you're into some not quite so legal stuff?
Yeah.
I know you have a lot of aliases, but you know, you call them stage names, and I'm using that in air quotes.
But for good reason.
You say it's for a good reason. I'm not convinced. But Wright is suspected of being the person who stole the Oldsmobile Alero on May 1st, 2003. He lived in Aiken County, South Carolina, and possibly in Atlanta, Georgia. His last known address was in Beach Island, South Carolina. This guy was kind of all over the place. It sounds like, you know, number of aliases, never stayed in one place that long. Again, why would you do that other than you just get bored? It's because you're running away from something.
Exactly.
Or the police. Because you've been doing a lot of shady stuff.
Trying to stay off the radar.
In November 2003, the building surplus and salvage on Jefferson Davis Highway in South Carolina was set on fire. It's possible that Emerson Wright committed this crime, and he's suspected of a number of robberies, burglaries, and arson in both South Carolina and Georgia.
Sounds like a very busy guy on the wrong side of the law.
Yeah, wrong side of the law. He's not a good guy. Number one, he's been convicted of a whole bunch of stuff. And if he really, committed all these robberies, burglaries, and arson, the Greer police wanted information about Wright's life and his connections, as well as his work history and the vehicles he owned or drove. On August 2nd, 2005, Emerson Wright was pulled over near Eatonton, Georgia. Officers attempted to stop him, and he crashed his car, got out, and then fatally shot himself in the head. At the time, the police were still after him because he was suspected of committing a series of robberies and burglaries in Atlanta and Augusta, Georgia. Emerson Wright died at a hospital in Atlanta.
Guess he really wanted to avoid being captured.
Well, he had a history of running away from the police.
Yeah.
We obviously don't know what was in his head at the time. I think, you can make some assumptions. One of those assumptions could be that he knew he was caught. He was not going to get away this time, and he didn't want to suffer the penalties that were going to come his way. You can make that assumption. Doesn't mean it's right.
No.
We don't know. But in June 2007, Emerson Wright was publicly identified as the main person of interest in the Blue Ridge Savings murders. He couldn't be officially named a suspect. Police did know that he stole the car in South Carolina and that he used a Glock in his past robberies. But no phone records or receipts placed him in Greer on the day of the robberies. Lieutenant Hamby told the Augusta Chronicle, at this point in time, we can't connect him to the homicides and robbery. What we've got is a very similar car description. We have a person, Emerson Wright, who was fleeing law enforcement for various crimes at that period of time. One of those which included robbery. And also the period of time in which he stole that car is very close to when our triple homicide occurred. So there's a lot of smoke there.
Yeah, he looks good for it.
But is there fire? And I think the lieutenant is coming out and saying, I don't know that there's fire. We can't prove there's fire. We just got a bunch of smoke. In September 2010, the Aiken County Sheriff's Office searched the home of Franklin Wright, who was strongly suspected of murdering 75-year-old Yana Schinker and 28-year-old Shalimar Bird. Franklin Wright was already in custody for assaulting a woman in Augusta 2 weeks after the murders. In total, Franklin Wright spent more than 30 years in prison for rape, armed robbery, burglary, and assault. So when they searched his home, investigators found items stolen by Wright's younger brothers, Emerson and Tyrone. These items were linked to a series of 2003 and 2004 burglaries. All right, so the whole family is in on these armed robberies, burglaries. They're doing all kinds of stuff.
They found out the easy money part of robbing.
Yeah, it's like a little family gang they got going on. On May 12, 2004, Tyrone Wright was caught stealing from a check cashing business in Augusta. Officers searched the Wright household and found stolen firearms, computer equipment, and other items. Tyrone was charged with breaking and entering. The evidence found inside the home linked Tyrone and Emerson to break-ins at multiple businesses in the area. The Aiken police revealed that Emerson and Tyrone stole computer equipment, money, guns, a pickup truck, shrubbery, toilets, doors, a water heater, and light fixtures.
So anything, I was getting ready to say anything not glued down, but it sounds
or not nailed down, but I think they stole some of that stuff as well.
I think so too.
And apparently they stole some of these things to do renovations on their own homes. You and I are very familiar with people stealing copper and stuff out of homes,
right,
things like that. But to steal a toilet because you need a new toilet, you're going to steal some shrubbery because you want to do a little landscaping.
Yeah, let me dig up these bushes out here, put them in my yard instead.
I dig up the neighbors' bushes and just plant them over here. They have no idea. Apparently, the police found the toilet in the house, and it still had the building surplus and salvage price tag.
Why cut it off? I kind of like it sitting there when I'm sitting on the toilet. I mean, why wouldn't you take that stuff off? Why wouldn't you get rid of evidence?
I get it. People are leery about taking the tag off the mattress because it says don't do so under penalty of law or whatever it is.
Right.
But I'm with you. If you're going to go into a business and steal things, at least take the tag from the stolen item off that identifies where you stole it from. Make the police work a little bit.
Yeah, just don't hand it to them.
Make them find you on surveillance. Sometimes they do that receipt syncing up with surveillance. I like that. The fact that they can do that now.
Basically, this is like writing a note. Hey, this is Tyrone. I took the toilet. I'm going to put it in my house for now.
It's like taking the tag off, but now you used a Sharpie and it says, I stole this from building surplus and salvage.
Right.
They were both charged with the burglary and arson at building surplus and salvage from November 2003. Tyrone Wright pleaded guilty to grand larceny and was sentenced to time served, 3 years, 3 months. Emerson Wright fled and warrants were issued for his arrest. That's the reason why he was stopped in October 2004. And obviously we know what happened after that point. When the police searched the Wright home again in 2010, they found more stolen items from the series of robberies. In October 2011, the North Carolina Commissioner of Banks closed Blue Ridge Savings and transferred it to Bank of North Carolina. The small trailer is still in its original spot, but it's now abandoned. So you and I talked about how maybe that was a temporary location.
Right.
As they were going to build something near it or around it. It doesn't sound like it was. It sounds like this bank was operating out of this trailer.
Just a way of doing business.
The Blue Ridge Savings case appeared on America's Most Wanted. And there was at one time a $100,000 reward for information. It was said that Greer police were saddened and frustrated by Wright's death. Lieutenant Eric Presley told True Crime Daily, that's a door that was closed to us. Not being able to ever interview someone that we considered a person of interest in the crime was very frustrating to us. I think he's the best person we have to look into. I can't say that he committed the murders. We need some more information. Someone out there knows something. And man, isn't that the case in every unsolved episode that we do?
Sure.
There is someone out there who knows something.
You just always need them to step forward.
And I do understand the frustration, right? You figured out who this guy was. He becomes a person of interest, but you don't have anything to move forward on. But I'm sure they were working on it. And then he ends his life. So yeah, you can still continue to work on it, but you're never going to be able to talk to him.
No, he made sure of that.
Greer Police Captain Hamby added, this time we don't have any other suspects. We've had lots of leads get called in, and all the leads have pretty much been followed up on, and we've not developed a suspect. Even today, we're still following leads, and we continue to investigate it to its fullest.
That's good to hear.
It is good to hear. It's just, though, seems like, wow.
Yeah.
Where are they going to go? Unless somebody comes forward and says, hey, folks, here's what happened. I was privy to all the information. Right. But even if that does happen, if it was Emerson Wright, what are you going to do to him? The man's deceased. I guess you could call it closed. Right. If you had what you thought was definitive proof. Can't do anything to him. Now, it is possible that he had help. He had an accomplice. Police were even thinking that it's possible there was a woman inside the car as well.
Right.
So maybe there's something there. David Holtzclaw was determined to keep the case in the public eye. He posted about it on Facebook and YouTube. He put up a billboard in 2014. He also asked Unsolved Mysteries to cover the case, which they did. David and Kevin attempted to get laws passed that require banks to have off-site monitoring of cameras, but they were not successful.
Which is strange to me. I think you would want cameras to be off-site where someone couldn't come in and snatch the data.
Well, no, let's face it. Nobody's using VHS tapes anymore. Everything's digital. And I'm assuming that most banks do feed that somewhere off-site. I don't think you can just go in and erase it, take it. It just doesn't work that way today. But to have a law requiring it.
Yeah. And it sounds like they also wanted someone to monitor it. Like, did they mean monitor it in real time, sitting in the offsite location, looking at all the different banks?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if that would be, I hate to use the word feasible.
Yeah, I took it to mean that the data collection was offsite, but it did use the word monitoring. So yeah, there could have been something there as well. And, you do have a lot of small banks, which may not have the resources of the regional banks, the national banks. So to put a law in place that, you have to enforce against every bank, well, you really could be hurting some of the small local banks. The police did look into the Blue Ridge Savings murders connection to the Superbike murders in Chesney, South Carolina, which is about 30 miles from Greer. On November 3rd, 2016, Todd Colehep was arrested in Moore, South Carolina. The police found Caleb Brown being held on his property in Woodruff. Colehep was linked to 7 murders, including the unsolved Superbike Motorsports murders in Chesney. In November 2003, Brian Lucas, Scott Ponder, Beverly Guy, and Chris Sherbert were shot at the store. A spokesperson for the Greer Police Department said, "We have reached out to the authorities and told them our interest to talk with Todd Colehep. Is it a coincidence the murders were done nearly 30 miles apart in daylight with no witnesses?" And we did cover the Todd Colehep story on TCAT. So that episode is over on our sister podcast if you want to check that out. There were several similarities between the Superbike murders and the Blue Ridge Savings murders. Both occurred in isolated locations. There were no witnesses at either shooting. The victims were shot execution style, and the killer had escape routes easily accessible in both locations. Todd Colehep was a student at USC Upstate, where Ebb Barnes was a professor and coordinator. However, Colehep has denied any involvement in the Blue Ridge Savings murders, and investigators have not been able to connect him, I don't think, Gibbs, in any way to the case.
Right.
Doesn't mean that they haven't tried, they won't continue to try. Detective Dale Arterburn spoke with the Greenville News on the 15th anniversary and said, "We do honestly believe that someone out there knows something. I remember it like it was yesterday. It's been like a nightmare in my mind. Trust me." The detective also said the case was unusual because shots are rarely fired during robberies. Big shootouts at banks. That's Hollywood drama. It's a rarity that somebody actually discharges a firearm, let alone that someone gets hurt in a bank robbery. And that makes sense to me. Let's go back to what we talked about earlier. It's the reason why banks have policies in place that direct employees to hand over the money.
Yeah. Just do what they ask and
they'll leave.
Right.
There's no need to kill anyone. I think it's part of what makes this case very interesting because seemingly there was no need to kill the 3 individuals in there, but for some reason, this person felt as though there was, either because they just plain wanted to, or like you alluded to, maybe someone recognized this person. Maybe the couple following him in saw him before he slipped a mask on. I mean, you could go a number of different routes with this thing.
I mean, if you think about it, knowing that Todd was a student at the university where EB taught. Maybe he was a student, and EB said, I know you.
Yeah.
You're in my class.
Yeah. Again, if they did follow him into the bank, maybe he was so hyper focused on this robbery that he didn't even realize there was somebody else who got out of their car after he did. And, most people don't drive around with the mask on.
No.
That looks strange.
Absolutely.
I think most robbers put the mask on at right as they get out of the car or right after they get out of the car.
During COVID, you could have got away with that.
Yeah, sure. And you and I talked about it in episodes.
Yeah.
You wonder how many robberies occurred because everybody was masked up and it was normal. It wasn't out of the ordinary.
No.
It's been 19 years since the Blue Ridge Savings murders occurred, and the only publicly known person of interest is dead. That makes it tough.
It makes it really difficult.
But we've seen what we thought, or what most people thought, were cases that would likely never be solved. So you never say never, although this does seem as though it would be a pretty tough one to solve, especially if Emerson Wright was the shooter.
Right.
If you have any information, you can leave a tip with Greenville Crime Stoppers at 23crime.com or contact Detective Arterburn at 864-848-5354. There is currently a $2,000 reward for information offered by Crime Stoppers. So as we wrap this one up, a lot of the murders that we cover seem very senseless. This one absolutely seems senseless to me because looking at it on paper, the robber could have gotten away with what they came there to get without hurting anyone. Now, there may have been something that happened that we don't know about along the lines of your theory. EB recognized this person, or one of the three individuals who were killed recognized this person and maybe said their name.
Right.
Hey, so-and-so. Well, now all three of the people heard it. And the robber felt as though I can't leave any witnesses behind.
Yeah. I have to unfortunately do something I didn't plan on doing. I am shocked by the lack of reward.
Yeah. That kind of struck me too. I mentioned it at one point. It was $100,000.
Yeah.
And now it's down to $2,000.
3 people died. It's what Elite is worth.
If we were doing this case and it was in Australia, it'd be $1 million.
Oh yeah, easy.
And it would stay $1 million.
Yeah,
They do not mess around in Australia with when it comes to rewards. Man, they really put it out there.
I'm just really surprised that there's just not more money offered. I mean, look, it's not going to get paid out unless you actually have a lead that comes through, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I get it. There are financial constraints and this and that, but my thought is $2,000 is not going to make anyone come forward.
No.
And either implicate someone they know or especially implicate themselves.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that for $2,000.
I think you have to be at least 10,000 or higher. And I don't even know if that's enough.
Yeah, I don't even know if that's enough, because even if you weren't involved, as we've said before, yeah, you can remain anonymous, hopefully, but are you taking a chance that someone's going to find out that you made the tip that led to this, and then your life is in danger over $2,000? You're not doing that.
No, you're not going to do it at all.
But that's it for our case on the Blue Ridge Savings murders. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, this is Chris in California, and I just started listening to your episode today and just wanted to send my condolences to Gibby on the loss of his mom. That's heartbreaking. And, I just wanted to tell you that you're being thought of here in California, and our condolences are out for you, and our love and our prayers. Be well.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and like I said on TCAT, man, the number of emails, voicemails, messages that I got to pass along to you, it blew me away.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's tough, but it's a good feeling, right?
Absolutely.
Knowing that all these people, they care about you, they love you, and they're sending their thoughts and prayers your way.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Crazy Welder from Wisconsin. And last week at work, I was listening and heard the episode about Ken McElroy. And I was sitting there giggling to myself because it reminded me of the end of the movie Roadhouse when, nobody knows anything, no one sees anything. And then you got Tinker, polar bear fell on me. I just had to call and make that reference and tell you guys to keep up the good work and keep your own time ticking. Oh, by the way, I'm Team Mike. I guess the three of you can fight it out on who's my favorite, but keep up the good work.
Polar bear fell on me is like one of my favorite lines, but I'm sure we didn't make the connection, and we should have, because we talk about Roadhouse all the time.
We do. Was it you that told me it was being remade?
Yeah.
Jake Gyllenhaal or something?
Yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal was supposed to play like some, I don't know if he's actually the Patrick Swayze part. He must be.
Yeah.
Seemed like strange casting, but not that I don't like Jake, but
I know you're on first names basis with him, so
sure.
That's why you just called him Jake.
Yeah.
I still have to call him Mr. Gyllenhaal. I can't believe he makes me do that still.
I can't either, because he throws one hell of a pool party.
He does.
I called a few minutes ago, and I just got off on some tangents. But I remember what I called about now. I'm listening to the latest Unsolved, and there's a sailing club. The 14-year-old girl that was murdered, she was a member of the sailing club. And I can't believe that Gibby didn't catch it and call you out on, you said, selling club, like I'm selling your product. So he could have called you on that because he said it correctly, I think, but you said selling, like you're selling me something. Oh, I love y'all anyway, but I just thought it was, I don't know what I thought, but I thought it was funny. Like, I don't know what I want to say. Anyway, I love you guys. Keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Well, I always say everything correctly.
You do. I would be shocked if I said selling, but I'd have to go back and listen to it. Sailing seems so easy to say that I'd be shocked if I said that. It wouldn't shock me that if I did make a mistake, you wouldn't call me out because you're supposed to, but you'd have to be paying close attention, which is not your forte.
Is that the protocol?
Yes. You're supposed to call me out.
Oh.
We keep each other in check.
That's why. Okay.
But people think I'm mean because I'm trying to keep you in check. You're just not paying attention when I mess up, and you let me go on.
Why are you holding up a card saying, just go with what I'm saying right now?
Because that's what I want you to do.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
This month, celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month with Pluto TV. Watch movies with the biggest stars like Eugenio Derbez in No Eres Tú, Soy Yo, and Luis Gerardo Méndez in Camino a Marte. Plus, Pluto TV has thousands more movies and TV shows and over 45 channels in Spanish, all for free. So download the Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming today. Pluto TV. Drop in, watch free.